I'm DJ Coco, and today I'm here with
Brooke Higgins.
We are doing an Alumni Spotlight. So I'll ask you a few questions.
Okay.
And the first one is, since high school, what have you been up to? It's pretty broad, but
Yeah.
give us the rundown.
Quite a bit. So if I go today to backwards, if I do it that way, I've been at Stevenson now for almost 15 years.
Wow.
Prior to that, I was working in marketing. I also did a stint as a franchise owner. I owned a Smoothie King franchise in Sacramento.
Wow.
Prior to that, I was working marketing for a bank called HSBC.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I went to business school, and prior to that, I was living in South America teaching English. I'm going backwards, right? Prior to that, I was teaching in Chicago, and I was in college. So that
is a lot.
That's the progression.
What was your Smoothie King thing called?
Well, it's a franchise called Smoothie King.
Oh,
so
Smoothie King.
They're based in Louisiana. It's kind of a Jamba Juice competitor. Yeah. And we opened in 2007 in Sacramento. Unfortunately, right before the Great Recession. So we lasted about a year, and then we had to shut down the store. It was a family thing. My uncle and my cousin and I, so we had a store in Sacramento and we had a store in LA. The store in LA was super fun. It was right in Hollywood on Sunset and Vine, great location. But just couldn't make it work. You know, when the recession hit, people are like, okay, I don't need a $5 smoothie. You know, my budget won't allow that. So we had to close down the stores. Great opportunity. I learned a ton. But unfortunately, we couldn't make the business work.
Where did you go to college?
I went to Boston College.
What did you major?
I majored in communications.
Okay.
I came out of Stevenson having worked at KSPB, thinking I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. So I started at Boston College majoring in Spanish. I was majoring in communications and then picked up Spanish as just kind of a secondary major. I took a bunch of classes in Spanish just to keep the language going, and then next thing I knew, I was basically halfway through a major, so I was like, I may as well do that. So I graduated with a double major, Spanish and communications, and really worked in college to become a broadcaster, and then found that the career was not what I wanted at that time in my life.
Back when you were at Stevenson, what was your DJ name?
We didn't really have DJ names.
Oh, okay.
I guess some of us did. I had a Monday night show with another guy, and we called it Monday Night Rocks. So we would have, and this was back when the station was in Keck, and so we had an 8 to 10 slot that we would play classic rock music. That was kind of our gig. It was super fun. But I also did a lot with our sports broadcasting. So I did basketball games, football games, you know, when we were basically just and still are, a student-run organization, traveling locally and broadcasting sports games.
Is there a teacher or coach that from your time at Stevenson you want to shout out?
I mean, there's a lot, which it's kind of crazy that Mr. Hinckley is still here. Mr. Hinckley was in my dorm when I was living in Wilson, and you know, if you think of it this way, I moved into Wilson in 1988. So 88, 89 was my first year here. That was actually the second year that Wilson was actually in existence. It's the same year Silverado opened. And Mr. Hinckley was one of our dorm faculty, and it's fun to now be his colleague after all these years. But let me think. There's a lot. A lot of teachers influenced me. You know, Nancy Allison, who was the World Language Department chair in those days, really helped me find a love for the language of Spanish and really travel and all that. Rob Clevin was very influential. He was my advisor for many years. He was my swim coach. He was my band teacher. There's a lot. It's really fun for me to think about, you know, how those adults in my life influenced me in terms of what I wanted to become, and it's really humbling for me and an honor to think that I might have some of that impact on some of our students now. Whether or not I do, that's a different question, but absolutely. You know, those are the three that come to mind, but lots of them. You know, my time here was, as a student, obviously I'm in the present tense, so my time here is, but my time as a student was very impactful for who I wanted to become, and the teachers and adults and coaches on campus were a big part of that.
Looking back, is there anything you would have done differently with your time at Stevenson when you were a student?
That's a good question. I mean, I tell my athletes that one of my biggest regrets is that I didn't do a team sport in the winter. I was a water polo guy in the fall and a swimmer in the spring. I do regret not either playing soccer or basketball. I think high school sports is a very unique situation, and you don't really get that team experience in other places.
Yeah.
You can nowadays. There's a lot more club sports nowadays. But in terms of representing your school and that whole community and culture behind it, so I do regret not playing basketball or soccer in the winter. Instead, I swam, and I swam for a club, and that was good. It was good for me. But beyond that, these are the things that it's like, what I try and do is not necessarily regret things I didn't do. It's maybe regret things I did, so it's like that attitude of like, just go for it, right? Just go do the thing, and say yes to things, even if you're like, that's kind of awkward, I'm not sure I want to do that. And so there's obviously some regrets that I did, maybe mistakes that I made along the way that we won't get into here. But I try not to think back and say like, oh, I wish I could have, right? Because you can't change the past, right? It is what it is. But if there's any, moment of kind of encouragement for others, it's, try and regret things that you did and not regret things that you didn't do.
That's my next question was going to be a motivational quote, but I really do like that.
Yeah.
So if you have another motivational quote.
Yeah, I did.
Those are both great though.
Yeah, it's good. Well, hearkening back to my Smoothie King experience, in many ways you could look at it as a loss, as a failure. In fact, I failed at 2 businesses to start. But I always go back to what Nelson Mandela said, who's a very inspirational man. He says, I never lose, I either win or learn. And I was like, that's really cool. And it's something we talk about on our water polo team as well. We might have a bad loss, but it's what you take from that becomes you're either learning or you're winning. And so there's really, it's hard to say it this way, but there's really, what I try to do is not look at failure, not look at things as like, oh, I failed. Okay, you can have a moment, it was bad, you regret it, you made a mistake, but it becomes, what can you learn from that? And that's what we talk a lot about in not just the pool for water polo, but also in the classroom. If you have a bad test or a bad moment in class, it's like, okay, what's the feedback? What do you need to do better, and what do you need to do differently the next time? So that for me is a big motivational quote. I have to remind myself when I get down on myself, it's like, hey, you don't lose, you either win or learn.
Our last question.
Yeah.
Who should we be interviewing next on our Alumni Spotlight?
Are you only on campus, or are you willing to extend beyond campus?
Honestly, but on campus.
Okay.
But if you have a teacher too.
Yeah. Obviously the alumni on campus are awesome. Their stories are great. But as I think about this, what I think would be really interesting, and maybe it's just my own personal interest, but if you were to look back at the KSPB personnel, who were station directors over the years, and if you were to do like a little, mini project to like exactly a series to like hit up these people, like who used to be the station director and where are they now? For example, the guy that was the station director when I was here is a good buddy of mine, Todd Zander, shout out class of 92. He didn't go into radio as a career, but I can guarantee you the things that he did here prepared him for what is now, for him, a very successful career. So I think he'd be a cool guy, but anyone that has worked at KSPB, I thought about this too. We've got Grace Ingram, who was a couple years back, who is, I think, in career-wise doing some stuff in podcasting, or at least was when she graduated from college. And to actually ask her, like, what was her Stevenson experience like? And I don't know if she worked at KSPB, I assume she did, but, what has that meant for her? So I think that'd be cool, like, retrospective really cool. Of, like, where are KSPB station personnel now, right? And then when you're in college and beyond, then we hit you up and like, hey, what was this moment for you like? And how did it help you prepare for your life?
Yes. So thank you for
No problem.
Alumni Spotlight.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.